So today we're going to be working with value. Two things. One, we're going to be learning how to use various pencils, which we have here, and a kneaded eraser in order to create different values, or also darknesses and lightness. And we will also be looking at and learning to draw forms, so taking something that's 3D and making it look 3D on our two-dimensional paper. So for starters, we're going to start with a value scale. So you're going to be creating an 8-step value scale, which goes from white all the way to our darkest, closest to black we can get with the pencils that we have. And so we have here 3 different pencils. The first one, and these come in all different colors, so color's not a great indicator of which is which. There's a little label. This says 4H, so H stands for hard. So the H pencils are going to have a hard lead, which is going to actually make the drawing lighter. You will also have an HB pencil, which is your intermediate pencil. And if you could only have one pencil, choose this one. You can do most everything with this pencil. And then you have a pencil that should have a B on it, and this one is a 6B. So B you can think of as standing for black or bold. That has really soft lead, and that's going to allow you to color really darkly. So we have those. You also have a kneaded eraser, which you'll get a chance to use. It's kind of fun to play with, but I'll show you actually its purpose as well. So for starters, to make your value scale, I'm going to start with this strip of paper. And we're making an 8-step value scale, so simply fold your strip of paper in half. Excuse me. Fold it in half again. And fold it in half one more time. And then when you open it up, you should have 8 steps. All right, keep in mind that our first one, flip this around, our first one's going to be white, and our last one is going to be our darkest value. So there are a few ways to make a pencil darker. One, you could literally use the darkest pencil. The other ways are layering, so we can put layers on top of each other, and then pressure. So to get our darkest value, I'm going to take my darkest pencil and I'm going to apply pressure. So this will give me really quite a dark value. And I'm not going to fill in this whole value scale, but I do encourage you to fill in each space fully. It's actually hard to, if you have inconsistency within each square, it's not going to be as effective as a value scale. It's going to be a little bit confusing to look at. Okay. So I'm going to start it then at the other end. So I got my dark there. Then I'm going to start at the other end, and with my H pencil here. So remember, the first one is white, so I don't have to do anything. And then I like to use the side of the pencil. It's a little less streaky. And I'm just going to very lightly apply a layer. And you can actually go right on to the next few boxes, because as you recall, they're just going to be getting darker. So if I just cover a few boxes, it's just going to help start to build up the pencil in those next ones that are coming. Now, if you want your pencil marks to look smooth, we don't need to blend with the finger or anything. The best thing to do is to actually switch directions with the pencil. So I'm going to go on to my second one here, and I'm going to go in the other direction, which is also building it up and going to make it a little bit darker. And I'm still using the side of the pencil, particularly with the H pencil, which is quite hard. It's going to be streaky if we use the tip. Okay. And then when you feel, I guess maybe by number 4, if you want to switch over to our other pencil, we can. I'm going to layer over this, just pressing lightly, because you can see without even much pressure, it already is going to be darker than the box before. And just switching directions once again to make it smooth and attempting to fill the entire box. And you're going to continue like this. And it's helpful at times to hold up your value scale at a bit of a distance and just sort of check and see, do they look like they're in order? Sometimes even squinting your eyes can help you to see if they're in order. So continue with this until you feel that they are in order. And sometimes you'll find that two look similar, so you'll have to darken one. If you notice that you need to lighten one a bit, this is where your kneaded eraser comes in handy. It's not going to completely erase, but what you can do with your kneaded eraser is use it almost like a stamp. So I'll just show you one here. I can press, and I don't know if you can see that. Just by pressing it like a stamp, it actually picks up some of the pencil without picking up all of the pencil. So that's going to be a really useful tool for you. All right. So once you are complete and happy with your value scale and it appears to be in order, you may go on to, we're going to go on to drawing the forms. Okay. So we have 4 forms that are out in front of us. The first one, we have a cylinder on the left, and then a cube, a cone, and a sphere. So before you can, we're going to shade them, and we're going to be looking for lights and darks on them, but before you can do that, the first step will be to draw them. So we'll start with our cylinder. That's going to be pretty easy. What I would recommend for that, if you notice, we have a vertical line and a vertical line. There's no need to use a ruler for any of this. And I'm going to draw it actually like a rectangle for starters. But if you notice, the top of it, I actually see an ellipse, and the bottom of it, I see a curve. So what I'm going to do is very lightly mark off a line down the center, and that is going to allow me to show me this is my center point. This is going to be the deepest part of my curve. And then on the top, I'm going to use this center line to help me draw the ellipse. And I'm going to kind of notice how much I see. If you're right above an object, you're going to see a lot of it. But I see just a little bit of the top. So I'm going to draw my ellipse here. Okay, so there we go. Simple. All right. The cube is probably the most complicated to draw, not necessarily to shade, because this is going to involve a bit of 2-point perspective. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to start with the vertical line. I see a vertical line that's facing me. So when I'm looking at a box and I see the left side and the right side, it's going to be drawn this way in 2-point perspective. So I'm going to start with my vertical line down the center. Okay. Then here's where we gets a little tricky. I want to know how to draw. I'm going to try to figure out how to draw the right side of the box first. So what is happening on the right side? I'm going to take my pencil, and you'll need to try this out yourself. I'm going to take my pencil. I'm actually closing one eye, and I'm lining up the bottom edge of the pencil visually I'm lining up the pencil with the bottom edge of the right side of the box. Once I have that angle and it's lined up exactly, I'm going to translate it down to my page, like so. Okay. If you find it easier, you can take another pencil, so I have that line and I can draw my line. You can also just, once you get the hang of it, I can just take my pencil, bring it down, and go like that. Okay, so that's the right side of the box. I haven't ended it yet, but that's the direction the 2 lines on the right side of the box are going. On the left side, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm closing one eye, I'm lining the pencil up with the left side of the box, and I'm visually pulling it down to my paper. Something like this. Right? A little less of an angle. Okay. And then the top, same thing. Closing one eye, lining up that pencil, and pulling it down. Okay, so you can check yourself here. Since this is 2-point perspective, these lines, the lines on the right side and the lines on the left side, should eventually come to a point. So if I were to draw these lines really long, they would be coming towards a vanishing point somewhere out there. Same thing over here. These ones would converge a bit earlier, I believe. So I know that if they are not coming to a point, I know I must have gotten my angles incorrect. So what I'm going to do now, because they look like they're going in the right direction, is I'm going to draw my vertical here on the left side to finish off the box. And I'm going to draw my vertical here on the right side to finish off the box. Okay, so how do we draw the top of the box? One, you can check the angle again. So I can close my eye, line up the pencil with the top left back edge, and come down here. You can also use a little 2-point perspective trick, which is to take this point here, and we are going to go towards the vanishing point on the right side. And I can take my right side, this point here, and go towards my vanishing point on the left side. Okay, so sometimes if you can't see a lot of the top of the box and it's hard to determine the angle, it's easiest to just use that 2-point perspective rule. So there you have your cube, and you can erase your guidelines if you like. All right, the sphere, super, super easy. It's just a circle. Until we add shading, all a sphere is a circle. So I usually like to do it by hand, just very lightly, move my hand in the direction of a circle without putting the pencil down, and then finally put the pencil down. And that should give you a reasonable circle. If you don't feel confident with that, you could always take a roll of tape and trace it, okay? And then the cone, also easy. All I'm gonna do for the cone is I'm going to draw a triangle. But then once again, I notice that the bottom actually appears curved. So I'm going to draw a line down my center. In the same way I did with the cylinder, I'm going to use that line down the center to help guide that curve at the bottom. All right, so now we have our 4 forms drawn. So the next step is to start looking at our objects and notice where the darks and the lights are. As I mentioned before, it's actually helpful to squint your eyes when you are looking at them. It helps to just see darks and lights and not see color. It helps to simplify things too. So we'll start with the cube. I'm not going to shade every form for you right now, but I'll shade a couple. We'll start with the cube. And what you'd want to do when looking at the cube is try to determine, it's pretty obvious which is the darkest side. So the left side is definitely the darkest side. And then the top and the right side, are pretty similar. I'd say the top is a little bit darker. And you can actually hold up your value scale if you like and try to match the value. So as dark as the left side is, it's still only about here on my value scale. So I can start there, and I can try to match that step on my value scale, and I'm just lightly shading. I don't have to get super detailed now. There's some little variations, but I'm not going to bother with them. So once again, just using the side of my pencil. And if I want to smooth it out, I can switch directions with the pencil. Okay. And then I'm going to notice like that right side, it's not quite, actually that's pretty white. All right, and then the top, I'm going to give it just a little bit of value. Using my lighter pencil, my H pencil. And then you can also notice the shadow that the object is casting. Generally, right at the base of the object is going to be the darkest. I see that here. I also see that on this side. So just noticing what I see. And then I notice this shadow's coming out this way. This shadow's coming here. And it looks like the shadow is actually not, it's not super dark. It's not even as dark as that side. And you'll notice shadows usually are a bit lighter and softer towards the edges. But that's something for you to notice in your drawing. Okay, so there we go. Simple cube. I'm probably going to lighten up the top just a little bit. It's actually not quite that dark. All right. So moving on, I'm just going to do one more for you. I want you to see the sphere is probably the trickiest to shade. So it is, I want you to notice, so we have the light hitting on the top of the sphere right here. And a common mistake is that people kind of shade this as if it's a flat object. Remember, it's round, so the shadows are going to go around it. So the darkest part of the shadow is going to be about here. So we call that the core of the shadow. So I'm just going to start with that. I'm going to use the side of my pencil. And this is going to take some building up. But I'm just noticing where the darkest is to start. And it sort of wraps around. And it's kind of gradually, so I'm applying less pressure here. It's kind of gradually getting a little bit lighter. But not quite to white. Also gradually gets a little bit lighter here. Usually the light actually wraps around the objects. If you can see, there's a little bit of light that on the bottom left side. I'm just going to keep working that. And we can start working on the cast shadow. So once again, the darkest part is going to be right where the object touches the ground. And then looking at the shape of that cast shadow, comes up here. You just got to keep on building it up. And that'll look rounder and rounder. All right. So we'll leave it at that. I would keep working that, but I think you probably get the idea there. So there you go. And these would be shaded similarly, just looking for the lights and the darks, and using the side of the pencil.